This is the Gutsy Health Podcast with Janique and Tristan Roney. Hey guys, welcome back to the Gutsy Health Podcast.
Hi everybody.
We have a special guest who's been on before because you guys love her so much, Cecilia Salvesen, who is also our business partner and coach. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys loved her with the essential oil episode. Oh my gosh, I got so many messages from you guys, and you have been requested by potentially hundreds of people. So we're going to try and make this like at least a monthly thing because Cecilia has so much knowledge. You have like 30 years worth of like...
Yeah, 30 plus.
Of just alternative healing modalities. If you guys want to hear her story on how she almost died from Graves' disease and had to have radioactive iodine, go back to the essential oil podcast that we did about a month ago. There's some really good, it was back in January 2020. It's really chock full of her history and how she got to where she is today. So,
and that was just the tip of the iceberg. And maybe one day I would like to explain how I got over that using alternative therapies.
Yeah. And you briefly brushed on it, but we would definitely like to hear more. But what are we talking about today, Tristan?
We're talking about skin, right?
We are. We totally are. You guys, we have had like this massive influx of questions around eczema, psoriasis, rosacea. What are the other skin conditions that people are coming up with?
You know, there's so many, Janique, because the skin is the largest external organ. And, you know, our cells proliferate to the top all the time. It changes. It comes from our columnar, and then it flattens, and the skin can pick up so many different conditions that we would need a week to discuss them all. So we'll touch on some main ones.
Yeah, specifically eczema, because I would say most people suffer from eczema. Then next would be rosacea. Eczema, psoriasis is the second most common. Wouldn't you guys say?
I don't know. They're both pretty common though. And rosacea is also up there.
And it doesn't matter. We'll cover them all.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm like, for some reason, my brain is not working. Which is the one with the color pigmentation issue? What's that one called? Where like the pigment changes. Vitiligo. Thank you. That's another one too. So Cecilia, tell us why we are seeing such an influx of these skin disorders, and is it getting worse or has it always been like this?
Oh, no, it definitely is getting worse. And the thing is inflammation. You know, it starts with the gut. Every disease almost starts with the gut because everything we eat becomes us, our hair, our skin, our nails, the hormones we secrete. So all the imbalances we experience stems from there. So if our gut bacteria is out and we develop conditions like candidiasis and inflammation leads to autoimmune diseases, chronic inflammation. Inflammation is the body's attempt to heal itself, but chronic inflammation can lead to autoimmune diseases, and a lot of these conditions are connected to autoimmune.
Right, totally. Well, and not only that, but people are using antibiotics more and more and more. And kids, you know, you say everything starts in the gut. And I think one of your first books that you wrote, wasn't it called You Are What You Eat?
Yes. And then later I changed it to You Become What You Eat.
Well, and I like to take that further, that you are what you absorb. Right? Like it doesn't matter what you eat if you're not absorbing it, and you're not absorbing it if your microbiome is completely trashed. And we know, like, if you guys want to listen to our past episodes of like gut dysfunction, we know that things like glyphosate disrupt the gut biome. We know that antibiotic uses disrupt the gut biome. Herbicides, pesticides disrupt the gut biome. Who hasn't had their house sprayed for bugs? That will potentially disrupt your gut biome, right? It strips the minerals from, especially with glyphosate, it strips the minerals from the plants. And so that's exactly what it's doing to your intestinal wall, right? So all of these environmental factors are all playing a key part, wouldn't you say, in why we are not absorbing, why we are having this inflammatory response that's starting in our gut.
Yes, and you must remember that foods have increased, refined processed carbohydrates have increased tremendously.
Totally. Like we will go to town on pasta, but we've demonized fat so much for the past 50 years. Don't eat fat because you'll get cholesterol. Well, guess what? If you don't eat fat, you won't make sex hormones. You won't make growth hormone, right? Like there's this really terrible imbalance on how we are understanding food, especially here in America with our standard American diets, where the majority of what we eat is carbs, processed carbs.
Right. And here's a really good example of that. We do a lot of work with people that have SIBO, right? The small intestinal bacterial overgrowth.
Totally.
And not every single one of them, but very commonly you will see that people with SIBO have floating stools. No matter what they do, the stools float. And if we actually look deeper into that, we do like a GI map where we can examine what's going on in the feces, the fecal matter. We see that they're just not absorbing their fat at all.
Right.
It's going right through them basically.
Right.
Because all these little bacteria in their gut are gobbling up the bile that's supposed to be breaking down that fat so that they can absorb it. So the fat basically stays how it is, goes right in with the stool. And then you get, at the very least, really greasy stools. And I am sorry to be talking about poop when we started talking about skin, but here we are.
But it's all connected.
It is.
Yes.
Totally.
It's all connected. And we also tend to see in those same situations, some big signs of an essential fatty acid deficiency. Once again, no matter what they're eating.
Totally.
So the gut, everything starts in the gut.
Yes. We always say that that your poop and your skin is the window into your gut, your small intestine and your colon. If your skin is healthy, like you most likely have a healthy colon, right? Or a healthy small intestine, or, some sort of normal balance. But when we do see kids with acne or little kids now with eczema, oh my gosh, so many babies with eczema that we keep seeing in our practice. So many 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds with eczema, rosacea, psoriasis. It's all because of this gut dysfunction and this gut regulation. And not only that, but 80% of your immune system, guys, is your gut biome. All right. Like it completely controls white blood cells. There are other factors too, but through different cytokines and peptides and chemicals that the gut releases, it literally will tell what the white blood cells, what it should attack and shouldn't attack.
And another thing we see a lot with the blood chemistry analyses that we do is that people with the chronic gut issues like the SIBO, they tend to be lower in white blood cells, total counts. And they tend to have elevated neutrophils.
Right.
But we do see these patterns, they play out. So it's not just theory here.
Totally.
Now, I want to go back for a second though. You mentioned, and we've been talking about the rosacea, the eczema, the psoriasis. There are a lot of people out there that don't know the difference between all these things.
Yes.
All they know is there's a rash.
Right.
Right. There's something that's not the right color. So maybe we can kind of start, Cecilia, with helping everyone to understand what are these different skin conditions. How do we tell them apart? And does it even matter if we can tell them apart? Well,
the thing with, let's start with eczema, because that's one of the very big ones that hit even from babies. But eczema, there's always the redness, which is the inflammation, and the itchiness. And there are different types of eczema. And depending on the type, it can be the dry, it can be the weeping, but there is the itch and the scratch factor that comes forward with eczema. With psoriasis, where the cells are renewing so fast, the immune system is so busy and the blood cells are renewing and the skin is building up and scaly, they've got borders that and then they build up this silver, white, scaly surface. They're not as itchy as eczema.
Okay.
And then the rosacea, a lot of people can get that mixed up with lupus, systemic lupus erythematosus, because systemic lupus erythematosus, you've got the butterfly rash on the cheeks.
Yeah.
Rosacea is a little bit different. It is red, it's inflamed, and it can have like pimples, pustules on it. And with some people, it can be just red and flat, inflamed, and other people can have that. Same as with eczema. It can have little pustules on it. There are different types. The main thing is they can almost all be treated the same way, starting with the gut and the immune system.
Same with vitiligo, right?
Yeah.
Like any kind of skin condition, like you should go to the gut first. You should look there.
As you know, we've got more bacteria in our gut than we have cells on the body. And we've got trillions of cells on the body.
Yep. I read somewhere that our gut biome is like 10 pounds. If you put it all together, it weighs as much as our brain. So I thought that was really interesting, right? Okay, so let's get into it. So someone has a kid or someone has eczema. So someone has a kid with eczema or someone has eczema. What is it that they should know? What is it that they should look at first?
Okay, let's start just with the sperm and the ovum. A lot of people are under the impression that babies, when they develop, they'll either develop to be healthy or to be ill. Now, I'm excluding hereditary conditions here, severe hereditary conditions, but the baby or the fetus is as good as the quality of the sperm and the ovum at the time of conception.
Yeah.
And so my advice to people 3 months before you start planning a family, detox, go on a good diet. They shouldn't even 3 months, they should be on a good diet.
Yeah.
But at least then, because as I said, the sperm and the ovum is as healthy the baby as the condition of the sperm and the ovum. And then with pregnancy, with the gestation period, it very, very much depends on what the mother is eating, because whatever she's eating is helping that baby to grow and establish and the cell division to take place and to develop. And that baby will develop according to what the mother is eating. So if the mother is eating a lot of refined carbohydrates and lowering her immune system, then the baby is at a risk as well. Then, of course, and this goes back many years, I don't know the statistics today, but many years ago, if a mother and a father suffered with allergies, the baby had a 64% chance of having allergies. Wow. If only one parent suffered with allergies, the baby had a 40% chance of having allergies. And so the whole thing starts with even before conception.
Right.
How good is the sperm and the ovum? And then what are you feeding the fetus? Right. And then once the baby is born, if the baby is breastfed, mothers who are nursing, again, whatever they eat will affect that baby. Just ask a mother to eat beans and see what the beans do to the baby.
Right.
You know, we know that. Right. So alcohol too, coffee as well. And so it stands to reason refined carbohydrates will lower the immune system and will upset the gut bacteria in the mother and the baby.
What's really interesting is I've been reading a lot about gut biome during pregnancy, and before we understood that when babies were born, their gut biome was squeaky clean. You're starting with a clean slate. But recent research has shown that no, it actually starts as they are growing in the mom because they're drinking the amniotic fluid, right? So we want to make sure that because that placenta and that amniotic fluid, it protects the baby. The placenta is kind of like the filtration system. But we're also seeing that on newborns, they're testing and they're finding over 200 different types of chemicals and heavy metals in newborn babies. You know, so our environment that we expose ourselves to, our children are being exposed to. Here's another thing to keep in mind is when a lot of women who suffer with autoimmune diseases, when they're pregnant, they feel amazing, you know, because the immune system kind of hushes down.
That's right. It calms it.
It calms it because otherwise the immune system would attack any foreign object, babies included, right?
Yes.
So mom's immune system is hushed, but baby's isn't. Baby's is developing. And so what happens when mom is overexposing herself to potentially allergenic foods, right? High sugary foods, things that we know overstimulate the immune system. Someone's immune system's getting overstimulated and it's not mom's. Because she's fine, because her body is saying, hey, we don't want to attack a baby and kill it. But baby's immune system is going, like, again, you're retraining a brand new immune system. And so when that baby comes out and has all of these issues and allergies, it's what was that baby exposed to when mom was pregnant?
Well, look at drug and alcohol babies.
Exactly.
Perfect example.
Right. Fetal alcohol syndrome is kind of an extreme example of that. But I don't think we give enough credit to all these lesser forms of essentially the same process going on.
Right.
Because for some reason we've convinced ourselves that outside of alcohol and smoking, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
What we do, what women do when they're pregnant.
Right.
But as it turns out, they're sharing everything, right? I mean, just recently an article came out showing that women who use parabens during pregnancy, which is a really common ingredient in cosmetics, they tend to have lower birth rate babies.
Right.
And babies with low birth weights are more likely to have virtually every health issue out there. So
And
it
that's
makes a huge
just one
difference.
chemical.
And that's just parabens. That's not even
Exactly.
looking at the thousands of other things that we're exposed to every day.
Right. So imagine a mom who's pregnant eating tons of glyphosate, not reacting, but baby's stomach is probably on fire.
Maybe.
Who knows? We don't know, right? Like gut biome, you guys, is such a new world of science. I think we have probably just delved into 2% of it. Like there's so much that we know and there's way more that we don't know. Right. And so that's why there's a lot of like-minded people like us that are banding together and we're saying, listen, in our clinical practice, this is what we're noticing. And we have to use this anecdotal evidence to share with each other and educate each other so that we can come to helpful conclusions for the mass public. Right.
Yes.
So, okay. So we went way back. We went from like conception to pregnancy. Now baby's out, or maybe you're an adult now. What do we do?
All right. Let me tell you, we were on eczema. Let's talk a little bit more about eczema.
Yeah.
The main thing is to keep the skin moist because the drying of the skin can start the itching. And there are quite a few things here. And I don't have a start 1, 2, 3, 4 points. I'm just going to cover a few points. But there's that scratch itch factor that comes with eczema. And the eczema, when you itch and you scratch, you then excite inflammation. And inflammation causes eczema. Then it can spread because you've got this terrible scratching going on. Your nails aren't clean, your hands aren't clean. And if you're breaking the skin even slightly, you're spreading it.
Right.
It's not contagious, but you can spread it yourself. You can soothe it too with, I know that in other professions, they recommend petroleum, Vaseline. I don't. Aloe vera gel is very, very good. But you've got to make sure you got the right aloe vera gel. The one that we have don't have the latex. The latex, you have your aloe vera leaf. And then that very thin, if you cut the leaf, there's a very thin inner layer around the leaf called the latex. And then you get the gel. So the one that we have, the aloe vera gel, doesn't have that latex in. But that, if you just have a shower not too hot, because that again can excite it, and you put the aloe vera gel on immediately afterwards, that can help to soothe it as well. And then of course the diet.
Yes. And what I also want to add to that too, 2 things. CBD oil, you guys, we've had so many people report back that rubbing our CBD oil on topically has helped tame the inflammation tremendously. So a lot of, and I've heard this mostly from moms actually, but there's a few adults as well, but they'll have their babies or their children take it internally as well as rub on the CBD oil externally. One thing I want to add to the whole shower aspect is you guys maybe get a filtration system on like your shower heads or something, because you might be reacting to something in your water. It could be the high amounts of fluoride or chlorine or some kind of chemical that they're treating your water with. We know, and we need to do a water episode, but we know that our water is so contaminated these days. We can't find clean water anymore, and our cities are not providing it for us. So maybe look into like a shower head filtration system for yourself, or make sure you're filtering the water really well, warming it up for your babies or your kids, something like that. You have to look at all aspects, right? Because sometimes it's not just diet. Sometimes it's not just environment. Sometimes it's environment and diet and stress all at the same time.
I'd argue it's always all of it.
Yeah,
it's never
exactly.
a single isolated factor. There might be a primary factor that is driving the bulk of what's going on, but it's never working in isolation.
Exactly. Let's talk about diet really fast. Not fast. We should, because this is a really big part of it. So
yes, but before we do, I want to mention with eczema as well, don't use very strong essential oils. You've got to be very careful. You don't use like cinnamon. It will definitely burn it. Absolutely.
Or clove or anything like that.
Lavender, chamomile Roman, chamomile German.
Always mixed with the carrier oil, right?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Those are very good. Don't use too many because the more you just treat it in the beginning with it not having broken skin, the less things you use, the better. The main thing is keep it moist and fix your diet.
Right. Do you have a cream that you have formulated for eczema?
Yes, I do.
Do you think, okay, I'm just talking out loud now, like we should probably have this for like a business meeting, but we should make one with like CBD built in it. Don't you think?
I can do that.
Like that would be a cool product to make, essential oils and CBD, or maybe they can just buy it separately.
They have to buy it separately because otherwise I have to get testing done on another product and then get it registered with the state. So
it's it's too much work and too expensive.
I'm going to veto
guys.
that right now.
There we go. You were all included on our business meeting and it did not pass.
But it's just as easy to have both and then just combine them. And that way you get to control the potency of it. Right?
And it's really hard to like put too much CBD oil on your skin.
Right.
Like you can't overdose on it. Like, so don't be scared and be like, oh my gosh, I did 5 drops instead of 4. Like you're fine. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. What were you going to say, Cecilia?
No, I was just going to say, with the diet is to watch foods that cause inflammation, and those are obviously carbohydrates and sugars, and then what I call not the clean burning fuel meats. Meats with antibiotics in it already, because that upsets the gut flora.
Totally.
They don't feed the cattle the best foods out there.
Right.
I have a client who is a truck driver, and he goes to the chicken farms and he picks up the poop and he delivers it to what I call the meat factories, the cattle farms.
The CAFOs.
And they mix it into the food.
That's disgusting.
And they feed them corn, and it's not the best corn on the market.
Right.
It's
GMO corn,
all the dirty stuff. Yes.
It's disgusting.
So they become what they eat and we become what they eat.
Right.
So it's not a clean burning fuel. So if you're going to eat flesh or fluid from an animal, make certain that it's pasture raised. And I've got to be careful because with my accent, people think I'm saying pasteurized. It's pasture, it's raised in a pasture. And that it is a free roaming, and not free roaming where these factory animals, they let them out in the shed for 20 minutes and then they say it's free range, not that kind. And that they grass fed and grass finished, not grass fed and corn finished.
So look for packaging that says 100% grass fed.
Or grass fed and grass finished. You'll see that sometimes as well. Yep.
And there's a lot of things out there. So flesh and fluid from an animal must be a clean burning fuel.
Yeah.
So fluid from an animal can be butter, cheese, cream, yogurt, milk, anything like that. If you do dairy, just make certain it's a good quality.
Totally.
Now, when it comes to these skin conditions, is it easier for people if they just stay away from dairy until it clears up, no matter what the source is?
You know, my first reaction to that is yes. The biggest culprits when it comes to animal products, one is, or just with things, one is wheat, one is corn, and one is dairy. Corn is because it's genetically engineered, and dairy is because they feed the cattle corn.
Right.
And the pesticides that it's genetically engineered with is in that corn that they're feeding. You know, they said, because the way that it works with the genetically engineered corn is it bursts the insect's stomach. And, you know, the FDA and other places, testing places have said it's not enough to harm a human being. But we eat so much corn. We eat corn chips and corn dogs and corn tortillas and
and corn-fed meat.
Yeah,
and cereals.
Absolutely.
Like all children's cereals are made with corn or wheat.
And so there is enough there to harm us, to cause leaky guts.
And we've talked about this, I think, on the show before, but there's this guy who tests your hair to see what elements are in it. And he has found that the average American, over 50% of the elements in the hair is from corn.
Yeah. You know, and the sad thing with genetically engineering and pesticides and insecticides, not so long ago, and I'm talking about maybe September last year, on the news, they said that, and we noticed there are no birds here. There are just no birds. And on the news, they said that the bird population had dropped more than a third because of cats, and they named other things. It's not. It's because there are no insects for them, because the genetically engineered products have done away with the insects, have done away with their food supply, and the birds have gone.
Totally. Well, we're spraying these insects, and then the birds eat the insects, right? And then they die.
Not helping either.
Like, it's killing them. So yeah, what I would say, especially about the dairy as well, is, you know, they pasteurize that dairy. They heat it so abundantly that the proteins actually agglutinate, and they become very, like, they're sticky now. They can't unfold. They can't break apart properly. And so it's drinking pasteurized conventional dairy is literally like sandpaper on your GI tract. So that's why I always tell people, like, unless you can get raw milk, but again, like when it comes to eczema, just get rid of the inflammatory foods, corn, wheat, grains. I mean, wheat is grains. So corn, grains, dairy, soy, sugar. So those 5 things, like, get it gone. If you're going to do this, you know, and when you do this, you can't just say, I did it for a week or 2 and it didn't work. That's not how the body works. Like, when you are dealing with healing your body naturally, you have to give something at least 3 months. I mean, there are certain inflammatory proteins in your body that take up to 3 weeks for them to be, like, destroyed and excreted from your system. So let's say you've implemented let's say autoimmune paleo diet for 3 weeks and you're still not getting any results. Well, it's because you're still swimming in this high response, and your body hasn't been able to not react yet. So give it time. You have to give it time.
Yeah. And there's a lot of other factors that go into that as well, right? Like how well your body eliminates these toxins.
Totally.
So even if you get rid of them, if they're built up in your system and your body's having a hard time eliminating, let's say you've got chronic constipation, for instance, or you never sweat, how are those toxins going to get out of your system?
Right.
Right.
You know, in that list of foods to avoid and processed foods is also, and with my accent, people don't understand what I'm saying, but deli meat, D-E-L-I.
Deli, yeah. Deli meat.
Deli meat. Okay.
We understand. Don't worry. We're picking up what you're putting down.
All right.
And I'll just interpret for you.
Because they are processed as well with a lot of things in them. So that's on that list as well. And then to eat the foods that really do calm inflammation, like ginger And there are a lot of herbal teas, beautiful herbal teas. It's got licorice and ginger and clove and black pepper and turmeric. Those, all of those in there, yes. And bring those into your diet, those spices, and eat. I always say to people, protein builds and repairs the body. Vegetables heal the body. Yes. The more vegetables you eat, the quicker your body will heal.
Yeah.
Fruit, in its portions, some fruits, and they cleanse the body.
Right.
And so if you eat natural foods, and people say, I don't know what to eat. I say, if it's man-made, leave it alone. If it's nature-made, go for it.
Totally. I want to expand a little bit on the vegetable aspect. Our society is losing its ability to digest vegetables, which is why I tell the majority of our people that are trying to heal, steam them, cook them, saute them, until your gut biome knows what it's doing. You want to steam, cook, or saute about at least 90% of your vegetables, so that you're not as bloated or gassy or distended, or because the fiber in vegetables can be really hard on your gut. If you have a gut that is struggling, a gut that's inflamed, you want to really give it its best shot at absorbing as much as possible. And through that is breaking up those fiber bonds so that you can absorb as much as possible and not have your gut biome or your body expending its energy on breaking up those fiber bonds, basically.
Right.
And sorry, I keep bringing in this SIBO perspective because it's been a big thing lately for some reason. But if you do have a SIBO situation, then there are going to be some vegetables that normally would be extremely healthy for you.
Yeah.
That are going to be harmful in this case. They're the FODMAPs, right? Yeah. And not every single FODMAP food is going to be a problem for every single person. So it gets really complicated. But something to keep in mind, if you're doing a really heavy vegetable diet and you find that it's just making your digestive issues even worse, making your skin conditions even worse, that could be one of the reasons.
Totally.
You might need to temporarily do a FODMAP style elimination diet until you get your gut healed up, and then you can reintroduce those foods.
And that with the foods today as well, let me try and explain this. We need, to digest our foods, we need enzymes. But to get those enzymes, we need the right nutrients.
Totally.
But we also need a good functioning nervous system.
Yes.
If we don't eat the right foods, we cannot secrete the correct enzymes to digest foods, and we won't have a good working nervous system. And a nervous system functioning not at optimal levels will cause symptoms like fatigue, mood swings, depression, insomnia.
Totally.
Not being coordinated, foggy brain. And so once you eat the correct foods that nature made for our bodies, because it's compatible, you'll secrete the right enzymes, and then you'll have a functioning nervous system, because everything in the body is under control of the nervous system.
Well, and to take that further as well, if you are stressed, let's talk about the enteric nervous system, right? The enteric nervous system is hyper aware of stress, and it responds to stress immediately. So if you are living a stressful lifestyle, your enteric nervous system literally shuts down.
What does it do though?
So it stops. So you masticate your food, right? You eat that, you chew, it goes to your stomach. Your enteric nervous system stops telling your stomach to produce hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid is, you guys on Instagram have heard me talk about this endlessly, but you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, you have a domino effect of gut dysfunction because you're not breaking down your proteins. You're also getting heartburn because it's not triggering your valves to close in your esophagus. That robust release of hydrochloric acid also tells the gallbladder, it triggers a hormone called secretin, which triggers the gallbladder to contract, right? So that gallbladder sac will contract to release bile. If you have low hydrochloric acid, that gallbladder is not contracting, and guess what? It gets stiff, and then all that bile gets stuck in there, and then it turns into bile stones, right?
Gallstones.
And gallstones. Yes, thank you. And so,
and then you go to your doctor, and they say, "Hey, we need to cut out your whole gallbladder."
Right.
And you get a cholecystectomy, and you don't feel any better.
Exactly, and you don't feel. In fact, a lot of people feel worse going back to SIBO because that bile is now just dripping into the small intestine, and opportunistic bacteria love to feed off of bile. Right. So without the bile being mixed to food, the bacteria is like having a buffet in there. Bad bacteria, I mean.
So by now you're wondering why we're doing a whole episode on digestion.
Because as I said from the beginning, because your digestion, your GI tract, the health of your GI tract is literally like your skin mirrors it, right?
Yeah, there's a huge connection between the brain and the gut.
And the gut and your skin.
And bile, just to finish up on that subject, has some very good functions because it emulsifies your food. It acts as a mild laxative to help work things through the intestines. And then for what it's worth, it deodorizes the feces. And if our diets are wrong, our feces stink. But if our diet is okay, it's not that bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, one of the indicators that you might have liver or gallbladder issues is really foul smelling feces.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So guys, so what we're getting from this is to heal your skin conditions. You want to make, like, if you're looking at what protocols, first look into like an autoimmune paleo diet. If that doesn't work, then look into FODMAPs, right? Because we might be dealing with some SIBO. If FODMAPs isn't working, then we need to look into like a low histamine diet. Tristan, can you go into histamine intolerances a little bit and tell us what histamine has to do with the immune system and how that links into eczema?
I'll just really briefly say that when you get a dysbiotic gut, then it tends to lead to a buildup of histamine. And sometimes you get even a mast cell activation disorder that causes histamine release when it shouldn't be there. But it'll create a sensitivity where your body is very, very reactive to histamine. And histamine is your body's immune action, right? So if you think of a histamine attack, it's going to look a lot like an allergic attack,
right?
Not necessarily, what do they call it when you need the EpiPen?
Right.
But what is that?
The norepinephrine? No.
Well, yeah,
EpiPen.
I mean the norepinephrine shot, but what's I can't think of what the stuff is called that causes that attack. It's an immune reaction, allergic reaction to like nuts.
I can't think of it.
No one.
Histamine?
It's not histamine. No.
I'm like, that's the one I know. I don't know.
You go into shock from it.
Right.
I feel like I'm playing charades here. Taboo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anaphylaxis.
Thank you, Cecilia.
Okay. All right. So anyway, it's not that, but it is all the other symptoms of an allergic attack: the sneezing, the watery, the drippy nose, right? The watery eyes, and all of that, plus inflammation like crazy in the gut. So in some situations, you do need to, once again, temporarily cut down on foods that either contain histamines or that cause your body to release histamines. We call them histamine liberators. And sometimes we need to also look at like your DAO production, because that's what helps to clear histamine from the body.
And you know what's very important is the histidine, because the histidine is the precursor for histamine.
That's an amino acid, right?
Yeah. And what this basically means in simple terms is if you think of cattle contained with a fence, the cattle is the histamine and the fence is the histidine. And if the histidine breaks down, the cattle are all over the place.
Oh, that's
so it's not a histidine overabundance. It's actually a histidine deficiency that can cause that.
Yes.
Interesting.
And again, we need the right foods with the right phytonutrients to build all these little things that we need.
Totally.
You know, when we do the hair DNA analysis, you know that when we look at the gut, we look at the external factors that plague the gut. Then we look at which nutrients are needed to build up the gut. And then we look at the systems that affect the gut.
Right.
So there's a lot of things in play here.
Totally.
A car doesn't just run on gas. It needs an entire engine with all of these little things to make it work and run.
Totally.
The same with our bodies.
Totally. All right. So, so we've spoken about the creams and things to put on topically. We've spoken about nutrition, and diet.
More specifically, we've talked about how the creams are more just a Band-Aid, almost a literal Band-Aid that we're putting over the visible signs of what's going on in order to prevent the social embarrassment, I guess, or the discomfort of it. Right?
And the one thing I want to mention is eczema must not be left untreated, because eventually it can become systemic. It can cause sepsis if it's left untreated and it goes deep into the cells in the blood. But it can also, skin conditions, skin rashes and eczema can be a sign of deeper conditions. It can be a sign of autoimmune conditions like lupus. It can even cancer. And for that, I recommend that people do the C reactive protein test, the CRP test.
Yeah.
But one test alone isn't good enough to really get a good reading. You need to do one and then again 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Because the body at that point of the blood test can be in a different place.
Totally.
You know, depending again on what you've just eaten, and it may not give a correct reading.
Yeah.
But if it's been chronic, and I'm not talking about just acute and it goes away, but if it's been chronic, you need to look deeper.
Yes. We're going to do an episode sometime in the future with our EMT, Nick, who knows a lot of information about lab errors, actually, and how common they are. So getting blood work and they're like, oh no, everything's fine. Yes, we've spoken a little bit about functional ranges and normal ranges and how they're different, but we don't ever talk about lab errors and how common those are. So if you have a gut feeling that something's wrong and your doctor's like, everything's fine, it's okay for you to go get tested again. You know, go with your hunch.
Or at least get a second opinion on what the labs are telling you.
Yes.
On a very, very quick thing, and I don't want to take up time here.
We got plenty of time.
Can I tell you about a lab error with my father?
Yeah. Yes.
He called me on a Monday and gave me his symptoms. And I said to him, Dad, those symptoms are related to your liver. Go and have a liver function test done. Let the doctor look at your liver. And he went, he got the results on a Wednesday. He phoned me and he said, the doctor says I have a liver of a young man. And I said, impossible, you can't. You cannot have a liver of a young man and have the symptoms you gave me.
Right.
The next day, Thursday, he phoned me and he said, Cecilia, my skin has gone yellow. My eyes have gone yellow. And I said, that's your liver. Go and see the doctor. Go back and tell him to look further.
Wow.
Friday, he ended up in hospital. Friday night, the doctor phoned me and said, if your father makes it out of hospital, he has at most 5 months to live.
Wow.
And I said to him, how on earth can you tell him on Wednesday he's got the liver of a young man and on Friday you give him his death sentence?
Right.
And he explained to me that the test that they do is done from the functioning tissue and not the dysfunctioning tissue of the liver. So where all the lesions are, it's not taken from that. The blood that they draw and what they look at obviously is still from the functioning liver.
Part of the liver,
This is one of the big reasons these tests can be wrong.
Yeah. It's like you can still drive on a road with potholes, right? But the potholes are still there. The road is still broken, but you're still driving on it. It's the same with like blood, right? Like it's the liver's still going to perform its healthier functions through the tissue that is functional. And so yeah, that's insane. Like, and that's not like, we hear stories like that all the time, right? Where like there are these missed massive red flags, but because of blood work, everything's fine and they skit you out the door. So don't be afraid to advocate for yourselves, you guys, if you know that something is wrong. All right. What else, Cecilia, do you think everyone should understand or know as far as eczema, psoriasis, skin conditions go?
All right, something that affects us, as I said, affects the gut and the brain. I want to talk about Candida albicans. Now, Candida albicans was first theorized by Dr. Orion Truss, I think in 1979. His book was published, and controversy surrounded it then, and it still does now, because a lot of people, although accepting it, there are still people who don't accept it.
Yeah.
But Candida plays a huge role in our actual existence.
Yeah.
And people say, I want to get rid of Candida. You can't get rid of Candida because it's part of our natural makeup.
Right.
We need it because it makes certain vitamins for us. It helps us to digest our food. And it lives symbiotically with us because we help each other.
Yeah.
But when the good bacteria gets out of hand, gets suppressed by the bad bacteria, if the foods we eat, like the refined carbohydrates, will feed the bad bacteria, and if that gets out of hand and the good bacteria is no longer the king of the castle, this is when problems set in, because the yeast factor that we have, it will grow spores called mycelia, and the mycelia will seep through the colon wall, get into the bloodstream, and then travel and set up other places in the body. And we can get things like eczema, psoriasis, we can get fungal nails, athlete's foot, dermatitis, all sorts of things. The main thing is that it can affect us in two ways. What we eat and things that we take, like antibiotics, will affect us. The foods we eat will affect us. Our hormonal levels, that too. But the one thing I want to talk about are the way that it can affect us, because it can affect us mentally as well as physically. When we eat food and we detoxify, we urinate, we defecate. Now, the same with parasites and with all these things in our body, even with the fungus, it will eat the food and then it will eliminate. And its elimination is what's affecting us mentally. So our physical symptoms that we have could be bloatedness, and it can be skin rashes, rumbling in the tummy, itches, and the mental symptoms that we have, it can be anxiety, depression, it can be insomnia and mood swings and forgetfulness, uncoordinatedness, foggy brain.
Right.
That's how it affects us mentally. And then we have the physical symptoms as well. Sometimes even with the mental symptoms, there's unexplained behavior. People just... there's that agitation that people experience, the poor memory, and also one big thing is the chronic fatigue as well. It just tires our brain.
Right.
And
so if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't have eczema, maybe you have these other things.
Yes.
Right. Like, and Tristan keeps bringing up SIBO. Like, you are probably suffering from SIBO, like your symptom isn't reflected in your skin, but it is reflected in your cognitive issues, like your sleeping or your depression or anxiety or anything like that, or like constant gassiness, bloat, constipation or diarrhea.
Yes, I was just about to mention that, the irritable bowel syndrome, where you can be constipated or you can have diarrhea, you can have heartburn, or also people would say indigestion. But the lethargy, all of that is accompanied by it, even sexual difficulties and infertility.
Yep. There's so many stories out there on the interwebs of couples that can't get pregnant, and then they cut out something like gluten and they fix their diet, and then half a year later they're falling pregnant or something, and they get pregnant over and over. It's so interesting that something as simple as nutrition and diet and inflammatory responses can affect conception. And that's not to shame anyone. You know what I mean? Like, this is such a touchy subject. It's so hard, and so I don't want to be like, hey, you can't fall pregnant because of your nutrition. No, there are other things too that play into it, but we just want to share all that we know so that you maybe feel inspired to do something if it resonates with you.
Yeah. I mean, pregnancy is one of those topics that is never a single, there's this thing that's going on that's preventing it. The last thing the body is going to do for a woman is say, okay, let's start reproducing.
Totally.
It needs to make sure that everything else is completely taken care of.
Yep.
Otherwise it's not safe for the mother or the baby to be putting yourself in that vulnerable of a situation.
Totally.
So you have to have everything else figured out, which makes it very complicated. And that's one of the many reasons why fertility rates have dropped so much in the last 50 or so years.
Bad breath is also a symptom of a yeast imbalance in the gut. And a lot of people, I don't know why, but they often say, oh, I've been told my bad breath is because of my liver. Now, if you think of the digestive tract, you've got one tract from the mouth going into the stomach, and then the duodenum, I believe here you say duodenum. But
I don't even know anymore. Don't look at me. I've heard it from you so much. It sounds right.
Well, you've got your small intestine and then your large intestine and right through to the rectum and the anus. That is one tube. The liver is an organ related to the digestive system, but it doesn't have an entryway into the digestive system.
The only entryway is blood.
Yes.
So its circulatory system is blood.
Yes.
Smells and gases, and like that's all, like you said, the GI tube, right?
Yes. And the bad breath, when you fix the yeast problem, that goes away.
Right. One other thing I want to bring up about skin and acne, especially, is one, hormonal imbalances that you can fix through nutrition. Another thing too is eating a lot of bad polyunsaturated fatty acids and trans fats. PUFAs. So we're going to call the polyunsaturated fatty acids PUFAs.
No, but when we say this, we're talking about a specific type of polyunsaturated fatty acids, the omega-6s.
So you're going to find polyunsaturated fatty acids in nuts and seeds and fish. And that's really like PUFAs in whole food forms, fantastic for you. PUFAs that have been extracted and heated from like seeds and foods that have been processed from like soybean. And I'm speaking specifically about like sunflower seed oil, canola oil,
the soybean
safflower
oil, like you said.
Soybean oil.
The most used oil, by the way, in the world, the soybean oil.
These oils are very unstable and inflammatory, and they are everywhere. I know when I go to a restaurant that they're using these oils because I can feel it. Like my GI tract like literally shuts down. And restaurants use these because they're cheap.
So cheap.
Every time you eat a French fry, you guys, you are eating these oils. And so they're highly inflammatory, and especially trans fats. A lot of people don't know this. So even with like oxidized PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, they're inflammatory, and your body has enzymes to try and figure out what to do with it. Now, as your body's trying to metabolize these inflammatory PUFAs, it's also utilizing its own energy to do so. So it's a net negative when you eat inflammatory oils. The issue with trans fats, one, they're technically illegal in America, yet food companies still sell them. If you've ever done microwave popcorn, that's trans fats.
How do they get away with that if it's illegal?
I have no idea. I think they've been given like a grace period of, hey, you have until like 2022 to make sure that all your products no longer have trans fats.
So they're still phasing it out.
They're phasing it out, but it's still abundant in our foods. And you know that you're getting that at like McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or something. So
the other thing too is that there are foods that are not trans fats until you cook them or microwave them, and then they become trans fats, right?
Now, here's the thing with trans fats though. There are 0 enzymes in your body that know how to metabolize them. 0. Like your body literally cannot do anything with trans fats.
So what happens to them?
So that's, you either store them or they create tons of inflammation and then you poop them out. It's a mystery, right? Like when people say fat makes you fat, this fat makes you fat. Absolutely. And it burns down the house while it's doing it. So there's like your body cannot utilize and absorb this fat to use for healing and repairing and hormone synthesis and stuff. It does. It's dead food literally in you, and it's destroying everything in its path. All right. So that's my little spiel on fats, you guys. So going back to acne, if you're acne prone, get rid of those processed foods that are high in fat. So like chips, fries, popcorns. Oh my gosh. The fake cheese that you dip corn chips into that you get from
the nacho cheese,
nacho cheeses, you guys, like all of these things that have all of these disgusting
plastic cheese.
Plastic cheese.
Plastic cheese.
Yeah.
Like all
basically anything you would get at Taco Bell.
Exactly. These creamers that they put in pods that can stay on a shelf for years and years and not have to be refrigerated. Those are all trans fats, because it's a fat that you don't have to refrigerate it, right? It's not going to become more unstable. It's the most unstable it can ever be, right? So that's why they use it in creamers and stuff. So if you have a child that has issues with acne, look at their fat content, look at the quality of their fat, because their body is, and again, how do you get rid of trans fats? Through your skin. You know what I mean?
There you go.
So there you go. So instead of straining the skin, because the skin's an elimination organ, right? Your kidneys, your skin, your colon, they're all elimination organs. So when your body
and your lungs.
And your lungs, so if your body doesn't know how to process something or it needs to get rid of it, it's going to get rid of it through one of these four.
But you need to watch with acne for refined carbohydrates as well, because when you increase your blood sugar, the hyperglycemia, it causes the pancreas to release more insulin.
Right.
And then that eventually will trigger the adrenal cortex to release androgens.
Yeah.
And one of the androgens is testosterone. And the testosterone will hit the sebaceous glands. And then that oil will block the pores and the acne is formed.
Wow. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So where do people go from here? I think
Avoid carbohydrates.
You guys, I mentioned on
Refined.
Instagram.
Refined, yeah.
Not complex.
Refined, yes. Complex carbohydrates are vegetables, right? Refined are like pastas and wheats
Man-made.
and bread, man-made stuff.
Cookies, crackers, pretzels, donuts.
The middle aisles at the grocery store, basically.
Do you know what was amazing when we went to China? And now Errol has been to China many times. And then when I went with him, he said, come, I want to go show you something. Now, when you walk into a supermarket here, you have 2 aisles, both sides filled with cereal. And he said, we went into a Walmart in China and he said, come in and have a look. And the cereal aisle, if I had to stretch my arms out from fingertip to the other fingertip, it was smaller than that.
Wow.
The cereal aisle?
Yes.
Well,
That's
it was like that
amazing.
in South Africa.
They have vegetables for breakfast.
Yeah,
What?
totally.
I loved it. When we stayed in the hotel, Errol ate the Western breakfast. I ate the Chinese breakfast. And I just loved it because there was so many vegetables.
Totally. I remember when we would come to the United States for vacations, we'd come to like Disney World and stuff. And the first place we would go to in the grocery stores were the cereal aisles because we're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Because in South Africa, back in the day, we only had like 5 different cereals.
And you kids weren't allowed cereals.
Yeah, exactly. So we're like, wow, this is so beautiful. And now I'm like, oh, this is so toxic.
And it's everywhere, right? Even the health
Everywhere.
food stores still have a full entire aisle
For cereal.
of healthy cereals
Healthier, yeah.
that are organic, refined carbohydrates.
You walk into a health food store, there are so many bad foods labeled
Yes.
as
Totally.
health foods that it turns my stomach over.
You're just
Totally.
paying more money for the same bad things that are going to
Exactly.
cause the same problems for you.
So I want listeners listening to know that there's hope, healing happens. If you are overwhelmed by the information, you're like, well, what does eating a healthy meal look like? We're going to post a link to in the notes of this show and have you guys, I'm putting together, by the time you listen to this, it's already going to be done, an eczema food meal protocol. Now you can go to this link and you can download it for free, or you can donate whatever you want to get it. But either way, I want you to know it's there. All right. So, so you guys are going to have access to this menu plan. It's going to have recipes. It's going to have your to-do list. It's going to have what you eat and when. Now, I do want to bring something to your guys' attention. This is going to be similar to an autoimmune paleo diet. Let's say you start implementing this, and after 6 months of implementing this almost perfectly, you're still having the same issues. You might have a histamine issue, or you might have a SIBO issue, so for the majority of you guys with eczema right now, you're going to follow this menu plan to a T, hopefully, and you're going to see improvements in 3 to 6 months. There's going to be a small portion of you that are not going to see improvements. And that's when we have to dive a little bit deeper into, okay, what's causing this? Are we dealing with mast cell issues? Are we dealing with SIBO issues? And then address that as we go along.
I just want to mention, you asked me earlier on about dairy and eczema, and I want to mention that it very much depends on the person whether they can tolerate dairy or not, because we discussed the quality of the intake. I have clients, and in South Africa, I had students that suffered with asthma, and some could eat dairy. And others couldn't. But the dairy they could eat was yogurt because it was fermented. And so if there are some people and they find they can have a very good grass-fed, pasture-raised, yogurt that comes from milk from cows that are grass-fed, and they can tolerate it, they have to see what they can and can't handle. Some people can, others can't. And they're not the flavored. I'm not talking about, I'm talking with the ones with live probiotics
and no sugar in it. So you guys, what you probably want to do is implement like an autoimmune paleo diet. Once you start healing, you can slowly incorporate these things back in. So for like a week or two, incorporate yogurt or something. Maybe you can handle yogurt the entire time. We don't know. But if you're going to try something out, try it. Like just go full force and get all the potentially inflammatory foods. And then as you heal, then, reintroduce one food at a time. Like 1 week at a time, see if you are responding, if your body is inflamed. Also know that healing isn't a trajectory straight up. It's up and down and up and down. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. Eventually you're going to get 6 steps forward, 2 steps back, but it takes some time to get there. So don't get frustrated when your body has setbacks. It's probably detoxing. It's probably sloughing off things that it's been storing onto. And what you're seeing and experiencing is a response to that.
Yeah, the thing we see happen over and over again is that people jump into these programs and they do make progress, but at the first backwards step, they say, it doesn't work for me. They give up, they jump to something else, and they go through the same process. And in doing that, they are starting over and over and over, and they're never making progress.
Totally.
And that's because you cannot let the little setbacks be your indicator that the whole thing is broken.
Exactly.
It's working, but it's cyclical. It's not a straight forward pathway.
Exactly.
And what I wanted to mention with eating the good food, and just for instance with yogurt, not to just have a lot of yogurt with sweetened things, but if you have yogurt and blueberries, it's an amazing antioxidant. The blueberries act as an antioxidant, and then the yogurt can replace some good bacteria in the gut. And you can never get rid of the bad bacteria, candida. You can never get rid of it. You've just got to bring it back into perspective again.
You got to tone it down a little bit.
Yes,
right.
And
it can't be the king of the castle.
If you have eggs, don't just have eggs. Put kale with it, like in your recipe book. You've got the eggs and the kale. So always bring good things in with the foods that you eat.
Totally.
And that's what I love about our hair DNA analysis, because it gives a list of foods you can choose from and make up these meals.
Totally. So anything else we want to say to wrap this baby up? I think we've given a lot of people a lot of food for thought.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully if you only get a couple things out of this, one of them should be that your skin issues are not just your skin, and trying to address them topically alone is not going to get you there most of the time.
It's not.
Your gut and your skin are inextricably connected to each other.
Your gut controls your immune system, and your immune system is the key to everything.
And another little gem in there that I don't know if everyone really pulled this out, but Cecilia mentioned that your entire digestive tract from mouth to anus is separate. It's almost outside of the rest of your body. And the only way that things cross over from that external digestive tract tube to the rest of the body is through the blood, right? And through these molecules that bring it through, until we get into a dysbiotic situation where we get holes in the digestive tract.
Exactly.
And that's when the barriers start to break down and we start to see all sorts of problems develop.
Exactly.
So,
well, do we have time to get a little bit deeper into that? Nope. Actually, we should do another episode.
We'll do a separate episode on that.
Because like there's the mucosal membranes, there's two of them, and it's so cool. And
we'll do a whole thing on that. But for now, just know the gut and the skin, they are almost one and the same when it comes to seeing problems show up.
Totally. And that's it, you guys. Thanks for listening. This was a great, Cecilia. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
If you want her to talk on other topics, let us know. We're going to be doing an essential oil class with you soon, probably sometime in March or April, right?
Yes.
We need to figure out a date and time.
But you guys, people have asked.
Yes, so many. So probably like end of March, beginning of April. Keep your ears and eyes open for that, for those dates. Look on Instagram. We will announce it there. We'll also announce it on the podcast. But people are really excited for that. Thank you for your knowledge and your expertise in this. Like, I know you've helped so many kids, so many youngsters and children and adults. So thank you.
Thank you.
And until next time, guys.
See you later. Bye.